Welcome back to Live Now from Fox, and you are taking a live view of the Israel-Lebanon border from northern Israel. We also have this live look as we travel further south. This is southern Israel from Gaza right there, as we do have cameras all around the world. This as Israel continues to prepare for Iran and its proxies to launch an attack on Israel following the assassination of Hamas's political leader in Tehran last month and a senior Hezbollah commander in Beirut. This also comes as Israel continues to fight Hamas. Israeli strikes across Gaza killed 19 people overnight, reiterating that it only targets militants and blames civilian deaths on Hamas because the militant group conceals fighters' weapons, tunnels, and rockets in residential areas. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken heads to the region today to try and seal a ceasefire deal. The U.S. and fellow mediators, Egypt and Qatar, say they were closing in on a deal after 2 days of talks in Doha, with American and Israeli officials expressing cautious optimism. But Hamas has signaled resistance to what it says are new demands by Israel, and the long-running talks have repeatedly stalled. An Israeli delegation is set to travel to Cairo on Sunday for further talks, and Blinken is expected to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday. The evolving proposal calls for a three-phase process in which Hamas would release all hostages abducted during its October 7th attack, which triggered the war. And in exchange, Israel would withdraw its forces from Gaza and release Palestinian prisoners. To talk more on this, I do want to bring in Kervin Aucoin with Aucoin Analytics, a 15-year Army intelligence veteran and the host of the Geopolitical podcast, This Week Explained. Kervin, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. So as these ceasefire negotiations continue, Israel is also continuing to prepare for an expected attack from Iran. This is something that they've been preparing for days now. Iran has not yet actually, taken any action. From that intelligence standpoint, what is the likelihood of that attack?
Well, right now I have the likelihood at a probable. That puts it from my private intelligence background at a 75 to a 99% chance that Iran is going to do this. So there is a chance that they don't. And that all is predicated on the ceasefire, which it looks like Hamas does not want to agree to the ceasefire, giving that open window to Iran to attack Israel. And I just want to be completely transparent here that this attack from Iran that they are planning is going to be completely different from the April attack that we saw. That attack through intelligence back channels was kind of, it was downplayed. They didn't do as much as they wanted to do because the U.S. said that if they did, that the U.S. was going to get involved and take out Iranian assets, go away from the nuclear plan that the two had instituted, the U.S. and Iran had instituted. So it's very probable that this attack is going to happen very soon.
And it's interesting because the attack in April was pretty much known as one that failed. And so there is that expectation that perhaps, as you mentioned, that the strategy that Iran employs in the coming days or weeks might look different. But it's also interesting to note, as you mentioned, these ceasefire negotiations are continuing in the Middle East. And then also the U.S. has sent a missile submarine, and making that known, which typically, and you know this very well, they typically do not publicize such actions. When it comes to an attack, do you think that Iran now might reconsider, especially given what has happened in the recent days?
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter among a lot of intel sites and a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing that Iran actually is capitulating to the U.S. right now. They are planning on not attacking as long as a ceasefire deal is done. Now they have to get their own proxies to agree to it, that being Hamas. But yeah, what exactly what you said. So a lot of this stuff would be clandestine. It would be classified. The movements of different naval assets. But this is an overt campaign as opposed to a covert campaign because the U.S. wants to let Iran know that if they attack Israel, you're going to start a regional conflict, and the U.S. is going to get involved in that, and that's going to be detrimental to every person in the Middle East.
So we only know what is being made public. The U.S. is sending the missile submarine to that region. Also, Iran continuing to say that they're going to retaliate, very much publicly showing their hand, if you will. When it comes to the more covert conversations, and no doubt there are plenty, from your intelligence expertise and background, what might those conversations entail?
Well, a lot of that is to de-escalate. So even with adversaries, the United States has intelligence assets out and about with with their adversaries, and they have these conversations through back channels. They will tell Iran, this is exactly what happened in April. They told Iran that if they had a more forceful attack on Israel and that killed Israelis, then that was going to be a red line. There was going to be a regional conflict. Those same conversations are happening. I do have some issue with this and making a lot of this overt because we do have a pending conflict in the Indo-Pacific with China wanting to invade Taiwan. So we're moving assets out of the Indo-Pacific into the Middle East, and that could be detrimental to our allies in the Indo-Pacific.
And all of these current conflicts and potential conflicts, many of them are connected in some way, as we have seen Iran strengthen its relationship with countries such as China, such as Russia. What is the discussion there when we haven't seen necessarily the three of them come together in action, but there have absolutely been conversations and discussion. What is the conversation from the U.S. standpoint when it comes to, just keeping a close eye on all of that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to stop. They want Iran to stop providing those Shahed drones and other munitions to Russia to attack Ukraine. They have told China to stop helping out Iran in these attacks. So that's the first conversation that happens, and then after that, the U.S. says we'll see what happens. And we have the Secretary of Defense. He's got a line into the Iranian regime. That might be surprising to some people, but that is exactly what happens. They are calling the Iranians. They are telling them, hey, look, we are close on a ceasefire. You stop providing stuff to the Russians, stop providing stuff to the PLA in China, and maybe we could have a conversation there about the nuclear deal. Maybe we can enhance the nuclear deal that was agreed upon during the Obama administration and then redone by the Biden administration.
Kervin, what else are you particularly keeping a very close eye on, given your background?
Yeah, well, first of all, like I mentioned, what's going on in the Indo-Pacific, that's going to be key. But really what I'm looking at, so from an intelligence background, you've got to put all the intelligence together, right? And so what the U.S. is doing, they're looking at Iran from, first of all, an imagery intelligence standpoint, meaning satellite imagery, looking at where certain missile systems are being pushed out to. The next thing comes the signals intelligence, so SIGINT. And so they're listening in on conversations among various military factions within Iran to see what the next move is. And then finally, this human intelligence, human position where they're talking to people on the ground and trying to figure out what is the actual date that Iran is planning to do this. And once they put all that together, they can share that with the Israelis, and they can put all of it together to kind of defend the entire country of Israel.
Blinken is heading to the region to participate in these ceasefire negotiations, also going to be meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Iran has not yet made that move, and there's a lot of discussion, as we've talked about, in terms of they're waiting to see how these negotiations go. Is that a delay tactic? It seems very unlikely given the fact that Hamas is refusing to, even be at the table, much less agree to these, sticking points. So is this just a delay tactic on the part of Iran before they act?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I'm assessing this entire situation. Iran is continuing to delay it. They have actually been public in saying that they're delaying it to punish the Israeli people, to keep them on edge, keep them nervous about when it's happening. But the truth is, Iran is assessing this entire situation to figure out the perfect time to do it. It looks like what they're using right now is that they're using Hezbollah to continue to fire rockets to kind of take out those Iron Dome munitions. So what's going to happen when this actually kicks off? You're going to see Hezbollah send a ton of rockets over the border into Israel. They want to overwhelm the Iron Dome. And then Iran is going to come in and they are going to send the full force of the munitions that they've had because of this delaying tactic. They've been able to stockpile these munitions. They're going to do a full force attack on Israel. And then we're going to have a regional war that I don't think anybody wants. And I hope within these negotiations, we can kind of force the hand of Iran to maybe stop that.
Kervin, before we let you go, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Look, no one's ready for a regional war, and it's taking our focus from the Indo-Pacific back into the Middle East, where we fought a war. I was there. I fought that war for 20 years. I think the focus should be on not allowing Iran to continue their nuclear program, not allow Iran to continue doing what they're doing in the Middle East. Go on the offensive. Don't go on the defensive from a U.S. standpoint. And let's focus on the Indo-Pacific for this coming invasion of Taiwan, where we have, we've got countries that we support that we need to help out. And one of those is Taiwan.
So given that you think it's best in terms of strategy to go on the offensive instead of the defensive, do you think it's likely that Israel then will act first?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's something that I flip-flopped on a lot on our podcast. I don't think it is good for Israel to go on the offensive, but then I also go, why are we letting bullies tell us what we need to do? As far as the U.S. and our allies, we've got to show that we, the U.S., the United States, all of our allies, we are the power. And if you align with the U.S., you are in good standing. And if you don't, you're going to have shock and awe on your country like we did in Afghanistan, in Iraq, early on in those conflicts.
All right, Kervin, we do appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox. Thank you.